when Ambassador Elena Vargas calmly stands and walks out of the Nexus Prime Council chamber. Every alien delegate's smug confidence shatters. In that single step, humanity signals that they will no longer beg for a seat at the table, and the galaxy braces for the consequences. The Grand Council Hall on Nexus Prime Station gleamed under the soft luminescence of its blue crystal walls. The ancient chamber had witnessed 3 millennia of galactic governance, its tiered seating arranged to emphasize the hierarchy of power. Newer species sat at the bottom rings, their voices quite literally rising to the elder races above. And at the very bottom, standing rather than seated, waited humanity's representative. Ambassador Elena Vargas straightened her formal diplomatic uniform, a deep navy adorned with the silver and gold insignia of Earth's United Nations Stellar Command. Beside her, Captain Marcus Liu stood at parade rest, his military bearing a stark contrast to the slouching, multi-limbed, or floating forms of the alien delegates above them. "The Council recognizes the human petitioner," announced the session speaker, a translator unit converting the grinding metal voice of Scale Speaker Thex into a monotone that still couldn't hide the Tremarian's contempt. Vargas stepped forward, activating her datapad with practiced composure. This marked the 37th petition hearing in 18 months. 36 previous sessions had ended with the same result: polite dismissal. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice clear and steady despite the soft clicks, whistles, and telepathic hums of impatience already beginning to fill the chamber. "I present once again humanity's formal petition for full council membership. In the past quarter cycle alone, human scientists have contributed breakthrough advances in neural interface technology, provided emergency relief to 16 worlds suffering environmental collapse, and brokered peace between the Drakari and Zephyrian colonies in the Vela sector." Commander Vexar, the Zephyrian delegate, leaned forward. His gray scales shimmered under the blue light, and his serpentine neck extended downward to better observe Vargas. The Zephyrians had been among the founding races of the Council, their empire spanning hundreds of worlds. "We acknowledge human enthusiasm," he said, his translator rendering his sibilant speech into crisp, patronizing syllables. "But enthusiasm does not equate to wisdom. Ambassador, your species discovered faster than light travel barely 50 years ago. The Galactic Council has governed interstellar affairs for 3,000 years. Would you have children who have just discovered fire demanding equal voice with those who have mastered the stars?" A ripple of amusement, clicking mandibles, vibrating crystalline structures, ululating hums, spread through the upper tiers. To Vargas's left, Captain Liu's jaw tightened imperceptibly. His dark eyes never left Commander Vexar's face, cataloging every twitch of scale and pupil dilation that the translator units couldn't convey. "With respect, Commander," Vargas replied, "humanity's enthusiasm has resulted in a 15% increase in Council territory resource efficiency. The adaptive agricultural techniques developed for Mars have been successfully implemented on 27 previously struggling colony worlds. Our contributions are noted and appreciated," interrupted a melodic voice. Resonance 7, the ethereal delegate, floated forward. The crystalline entity pulsed with blue-violet light as it spoke, its translator conveying a voice that somehow sounded like multiple speakers in perfect harmony. "But contribution does not necessitate governance. The ethereal collective has observed that human unpredictability introduces chaos variables into our future models. You are valuable tools, Ambassador Vargas, but tools must be guided by experienced hands." "Chaos incarnate," muttered Scale Speaker Thex, not bothering to activate his translator. Though Vargas's diplomatic implant caught and rendered the Tremarian phrase anyway. The lizard-like representative's throat sac inflated in what passed for a laugh among his kind. Captain Liu stepped closer to Vargas, lowering his voice. "Ambassador, They're following the same script as last month, and the month before. Elena Vargas had served in diplomatic posts across human space, before being selected as humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. She had negotiated with corporation heads, whose egos dwarfed their stellar mining operations. She had brokered peace between generational enemies on Mars's northern settlements. She had never lost her composure, even when Earth's Unity War threatened to spill into the outer colonies. But something in Thex's dismissive laugh, the same laugh she had endured for 18 months, finally cracked her perfect diplomatic facade. She made a subtle hand gesture to her aide, who immediately transmitted a coded signal. Then, Ambassador Elena Vargas did something unprecedented in Council history. She deactivated her datapad, tucked it into her uniform pocket, and simply stepped back from the petitioner's circle. "Honored delegates," she said, her voice calm but carrying an unfamiliar edge that silenced the chamber instantly. For 18 months, humanity has presented evidence of our contributions, capabilities, and commitment to galactic peace. For 18 months, we have been called children, tools, and chaos incarnate. She straightened to her full height, which seemed suddenly more imposing than her modest stature should allow. This ends today. Humanity will no longer petition for that which should be freely given in recognition of mutual respect. As of this moment, I am authorized to inform the Council that all human colonies, research stations, outposts, and personnel will withdraw from all territories except the 3 systems originally allocated to us upon first contact. Confused murmurs and clicks filled the chamber. Commander Vexar's scales shifted from gray to a pale yellow, a sign of surprise among Cepharians. "What precisely do you mean, Ambassador?" he demanded. "I mean, Commander, that humanity is going home. We will no longer contribute our chaos to your ordered galaxy. We will no longer offer our enthusiastic aid. We will no longer serve as your tools." She turned to Captain Liu. "Captain, please inform Admiral Caldwell that Project Pioneer's Pride is now active." Liu tapped his wrist communicator, his eyes never leaving the increasingly agitated alien delegates. Message transmitted. Ambassador. Resonance. Seven's crystalline structure pulsed with rapid flashes of discordant color. "This is unexpected. Our models did not predict this response." "That's the problem with chaos variables, isn't it?" Vargas said with a tight smile. "We tend to be unpredictable." She turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, Captain Liu falling into step beside her. Behind them, the council erupted into a cacophony of overlapping translations, urgent questions, and shocked exclamations. As the massive doors closed behind them, Liu finally spoke. "You know there's no going back from this, right?" Vargas nodded, her steps never faltering. "Sometimes you have to walk away from the table to change the terms of negotiation, Captain. And if they don't call us back?" She stopped then, turning to face him fully. "Then humanity will chart its own course among the stars, without their permission, without their constraints, and without their condescension." Liu felt a chill run down his spine. In that moment, he knew they had crossed a point of no return. Within hours of Ambassador Vargas's declaration, Admiral Susan Caldwell mobilized the human evacuation fleet. From the Central Command Center on Earth's orbital station, she dispatched encrypted orders to every human outpost, research facility, mining operation, and colony beyond the 3 original systems. "Strip everything," her orders read. "All proprietary research, all cutting-edge equipment, all personnel. Leave nothing that is ours. We depart in accordance with all existing treaties, which means we take what is legally human property." On Kepler Research Station, Dr. Amina Patel stared at the evacuation order on her screen, then at the bewildered face of her Drakari research partner, Veldon. They had worked together for 7 years, mapping the genetic sequences of various species to identify universal medical treatments. "You cannot be serious," Veldon said, his liver-blue skin rippling with emotional distress as Patel began downloading and then deleting research files. Our Xenobiology archive represents decades of joint discoveries. Joint discoveries funded by human grants, housed on human servers, conducted primarily by human researchers. Patel replied, her voice tight with conflicted emotions. I'm sorry, Veldon. I don't make policy. But our treatment protocols for neural degradation are still in development. Without the baseline data, then perhaps the Council should have considered humanity's value before dismissing us as mere tools, Patel said, the bitterness in her voice surprising even herself. She removed a final data crystal and watched as the main database wiped itself clean. Veldon's skin shifted from blue to a deep violet, the Drakari equivalent of stunned indignation. On Titan VII mining colony, Captain Luis Romero supervised as massive extraction rigs were disassembled and loaded onto transport ships. The Drakari overseer, Sektar, stormed across the loading bay, flanked by security personnel. This equipment is essential to the mining operation, Sektar hissed. Pointed teeth bared in what humans had learned was both a sign of anger and negotiating posture. You cannot simply remove it. Romero held up his datapad, displaying the original contract. Section 47, Paragraph 12. All extraction equipment remains the property of Terra Nova Mining Corporation, a human enterprise. We're not violating any agreements. Overseer, we're simply reclaiming our property. As the final human transport ships departed, the massive mining structures ground to a standstill. Sector stood alone in the control room, watching as system after system shut down, requiring human access codes and expertise that were now en route to the stars. On Proxima Delta Outpost, Dr. Marisol Vega worked with grim determination, her fingers flying over specialized equipment. The prototype faster-than-light communication system, a quantum entanglement model that would have revolutionized galactic communication, had been her life's work. And now she was about to destroy it. Harmony 4, an envoy from the Ethereal Collective, and assistant to Council Member Resonance 7, hovered nearby, its crystalline form pulsing with agitation. This technology represents a fundamental breakthrough, the Ethereal pleaded, its translator rendering its distress into fragmented sentences. To destroy such knowledge, unconscionable violation of scientific principle. Vega looked up, her eyes hard. Knowledge is power. Harmony 4. Power the Council has deemed humanity too chaotic to wield responsibly. She pressed a final sequence, and the entanglement matrices deconstructed themselves at the quantum level. I've left a text explaining the theoretical basis in your database. Perhaps in 1,000 years, when the Council deems us mature enough, we can discuss practical applications. The Ethereal's form emitted a keening wail that needed no translation. In the private chambers of the Saphirian delegation on Nexus Prime, Commander Vexar reviewed the incoming data with growing alarm. His aide, Sexalar, updated the projection models as reports flooded in. Impossible, Vexar muttered, scales fluctuating between yellow alarm and gray disbelief. The humans were supposed to require months to evacuate even a single major outpost. How are entire colonies vanishing in mere weeks? Their logistical capabilities exceed our models, Sexalar admitted, and they appear to be extracting their technologies with unprecedented efficiency. Elsewhere, on Nexus Prime, Scale Speaker Thex received urgent communications from the Tremarian homeworld. What do you mean? The mining yields have collapsed, he demanded, of the hollow projection before him. The human engineers are gone, the mining director explained, panic evident in his rapid eye blinking. The extraction algorithms were integrated with their systems. Without them, efficiency has dropped by 70%. 3 processing centers have already shut down completely. The economic impact? Find replacements, Thex snarled. We've tried. None of our engineers understand how the human systems integrated with our technology. They operated at levels of complexity that Thex cut the transmission, his throat sac deflating in the Tremerian expression of dread. As evacuation plans accelerated, Ambassador Vargas and Captain Liu made final preparations aboard the diplomatic vessel, Unity. Vargas stood before the viewport, watching the gleaming expanse of Nexus Prime Station slowly rotate against the backdrop of stars. "Do you think they understand yet?" Liu asked, joining her at the viewport. "They're beginning to," Vargas replied. "But understanding and acceptance are different matters. The Council races have spent millennia believing in their superiority. Such beliefs don't crumble overnight. And if they never call us back? If they decide they can manage without us?" Vargas turned to him, a sad smile playing at her lips. "Then humanity will have answered a different question than the one we thought we were asking. We wanted to know if we could be their equals. Perhaps what we'll discover is whether they can be ours." As the Unity disengaged from Nexus Prime's docking ring, Vargas felt no triumph. She had come seeking partnership and found patronizing dismissal. Now she shepherded an exodus she had never wanted to lead. The stars outside seemed colder somehow, more distant, as humanity retreated to chart its own uncertain course. Within months, the ripple effects of humanity's withdrawal spread across Council space like a slow-motion shockwave. Lieutenant Morgan Hale had been the logistics coordinator for 12 Zephyrian military bases scattered across the Orion Spur. Her departure, along with her entire human supply team, left the Zephyrian military scrambling to understand the complex distribution systems she had designed. Food, fuel, and equipment deliveries faltered, then failed entirely. Within weeks, Zephyrian commanders were sending desperate pleas to Nexus Prime as their bases began severe rationing. The ecological impact proved even more devastating. On Corax 4, the abrupt departure of Professor Nancy Lee left her engineered bacteria colony unmaintained. The microorganisms had been specifically designed to neutralize toxic industrial runoff from Drakari manufacturing centers. Without Lee's expertise, the bacterial colonies collapsed, and poisonous effluent began seeping back into Corax 4's water table. Within 3 months, the planet's major city centers reported widespread illness, and evacuation plans were drafted as the world teetered toward uninhabitability. Similarly, the Crystalline Republic's primary mining operation on Keth 7 choked under environmental disaster when human bioengineers departed with their atmospheric filtration designs. The crystalline workers, perfectly adapted to process ore, but lacking the biological understanding to maintain the complex ecological balance, watched in helpless horror as toxic gases began to render entire mining sectors inaccessible. Perhaps most alarming to the Council was the eruption of trade wars in the neutral zone. Captain Sofia Ramos had served as the human trade liaison for 5 fractious species, whose historical animosities had been held in check by her diplomatic skills. Without her, centuries-old grievances resurfaced. Trading posts that had once processed billions in commerce daily fell silent as species accused each other of contract violations, resource theft, and territorial incursions. Commander Vexar, watching prediction models collapse across multiple sectors, convened an emergency summit of the highest-ranking Council delegates. "We face unprecedented system-wide failures," he admitted, his scales a dull gray of concern. "Without human logistical, technological, and ecological expertise, critical infrastructure is failing at an accelerating rate." Resonance 7 hovered in the center of the chamber, its crystalline structure emitting discordant pulses of light. "Our predictive models have become unreliable," the ethereal admitted. "Without the human chaos variables as reference points, we can no longer chart futures beyond a mere 7-day cycle. Commercial, military, and social planning efforts are becoming increasingly untethered." Scale. Speaker. Thex's throat sac inflated and deflated rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. The Tremarian Collective has lost 30% of its industrial output. Mining colonies are failing. Agricultural worlds require human-designed pollinators. We face economic collapse within 6 standard cycles. Other delegates reported similar crises. The Zephyrian representative described military readiness at critical lows. The Drakari ambassador warned of imminent famine as food production systems designed by humans failed without maintenance. The Crystalline Republic delegate's form vibrated with such distress that its translator could barely render coherent speech. Meanwhile, in a classified recording chamber aboard the human flagship, Horizon's Edge, Ambassador Vargas documented every council shortcoming caused by humanity's departure. Her voice was clinical, her manner professional, but she felt no triumph as she cataloged the suffering spreading across formerly prosperous worlds. Galactic date 4587.3, she dictated. Reports confirm collapse of water purification systems on Drakari agricultural world Thex Prime. Estimated 2 million sentients at risk of waterborne illness. Human hydroengineering team that previously maintained system has been reassigned to Mars Terraform Acceleration Project. Captain Marcus Liu, now promoted to Major, reviewed security footage from the Council's emergency session, which human intelligence had managed to intercept. They're panicking, he observed, watching Commander Vexar's scales shift rapidly between colors. As they should be, Vargas replied, pausing her recording. They built an entire galactic civilization around the assumption that each species would maintain its appropriate role. We were supposed to be the clever pets, providing innovation, but taking no part in governance. And now they learn that interdependence means exactly that. Mutual reliance, not exploitation. She turned back to her recording device, but hesitated. I take no pleasure in this, Marcus. The suffering of innocent beings on these worlds was never our objective. But it was the predictable outcome of the Council's arrogance, Liu said quietly. They gambled that we would never walk away. They were wrong. Vargas nodded slowly. And now we all pay the price of their miscalculation. I only hope the final accounting leads to a more equitable future. If there is a future, Liu said grimly. Reports from the outer systems indicate increased Void Hunter activity. Without coordinated defenses, several minor council outposts have already gone dark. Vargas's expression darkened. The Void Hunters, a mysterious, predatory species from the Galactic Rim, had been held at bay for centuries by Council military might. If that defense was now crumbling, the consequences would reach far beyond political realignment. Then we had better ensure our own defenses are ready, she said. Because while I'm willing to let the Council face the consequences of their pride, I'll not stand by and watch sentient beings fall prey to the Hunters. Liu studied her face, understanding dawning in his eyes. You never intended this to be permanent, did you? This was always about forcing them to recognize our value. Of course, Vargas said softly. But recognition without respect is meaningless. They need to understand that humanity is not simply a useful tool, but an equal partner. And some lessons can only be learned the hard way. 2 years passed. The Galactic Council, once the proud governing body of 50 sentient species, had dwindled to 23 active members. Entire sectors had fallen silent. Communication ceasing as Void Hunters exploited the gaps in formerly unified defenses. Emergency sessions became the norm, rather than the exception, and the Grand Council Hall, with its gleaming blue crystal walls, echoed with the sounds of desperate debate. Then, in a historic unanimous vote born not of consensus, but desperation, the Council authorized a last-ditch diplomatic mission. Each remaining member species broadcast the same message to the 3 systems where humanity had retreated. Return to help us stave off total collapse. But as the Council's envoy ships approached the border of human space, their scanners detected massive energy signatures. A vast fleet was emerging from deep intergalactic space, not from the 3 designated human systems at all. The human vessels were unlike anything in Council records. Sleek, angular ships bristled with energy arrays of unfamiliar design. They moved in formations that seemed chaotic at first glance, but revealed complex patterns upon closer analysis. And they were heading not toward Council space, but toward the Xerion system at the edge of Council territory, where the largest Void Hunter armada ever recorded was massing for a final assault. Admiral Chloe Moreno stood on the bridge of the human flagship, Pioneer's Dawn, reviewing tactical displays as her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 2 years of development in the darkness between spiral arms, regions the Council had deemed uninhabitable, had yielded technologies that would have been impossible under Council restrictions. Void Hunter forces have detected us, Admiral, her tactical officer reported. They're adjusting formation to intercept. As expected, Moreno replied calmly. They've never been able to resist a new target, especially one that appears threatening. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. All vessels, implement Adaptive Protocol Theta. Weapon clusters to recalibration mode. Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity today. The fate of multiple sentient species hangs in the balance. Council warships, which had been staging a desperate last stand against the Hunters, fell back in confusion as the human fleet engaged. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history. The Void Hunters, monstrous, biomechanical entities whose ships seemed to blend organic and technological components, had always relied on overwhelming force and terror. Their tactics were brutally straightforward: identify weaknesses, exploit them mercilessly, and consume the remains. But the human fleet moved like no military force the Hunters had encountered. When the Hunters adapted to one tactical approach, the humans would shift to another. When Hunter vessels targeted a seemingly vulnerable human ship, they would discover it was a deliberate lure into a crossfire. Human weapon systems recalibrated mid-battle, adjusting to penetrate Hunter shields that had previously been impenetrable. Over 6 hours of continuous engagement, the tide turned decisively. Hunter vessels, accustomed to easy victory, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Their attempts to retreat were cut off by human ships that somehow anticipated their withdrawal vectors. Their desperate final counterattacks broke against defensive screens that adapted to each new assault. When the last Hunter vessel shuddered into radioactive debris, Admiral Moreno opened a channel to the Council warships that had watched the entire battle in stunned silence. This is Admiral Moreno of the United Earth Fleet. The Xerion system is now secure. We will be establishing defensive perimeters against further incursions. Council vessels are welcome to assist or to return to Nexus Prime as you see fit. The message was met with silence. Then, hesitantly, the Seferian commander responded, Admiral Moreno, the Council extends its gratitude for your intervention. May we inquire as to humanity's intentions now that the Hunter threat has been neutralized? Moreno smiled thinly. That, Commander, is a question for diplomats. I believe Ambassador Vargas will be contacting the Council shortly. In the meantime, I suggest you examine the tactical data from this engagement. You may find it educational. On the command ship of the Council fleet, Commander Vexar stared at the holodisplay, his scales paling to an ashen white. For 3 millennia, the Council races had believed their technology, their tactics, their very way of life was superior to all others. They had dismissed humanity's chaos as a liability rather than an asset. And in 6 hours, that belief had been utterly shattered. The aftermath of the Battle of Xerion marked the beginning of a new era in galactic relations. As Void Hunter forces retreated to the Rim, human-led initiatives began addressing the widespread damage left by 2 years of Council decline. Dr. Paul Mitchell, once the lead researcher at the Terran Exobiology Institute, now headed a team of human scientists dispatched to Corax 4. The once thriving world had become a toxic wasteland in humanity's absence. its water systems poisoned, and its atmosphere increasingly harmful to the Drakari inhabitants. The bacterial remediation will take time, Mitchell explained to the gathered Drakari officials. His environmental suit was necessary now, but he promised them. Within 1 standard year, these engineered microbes will have neutralized the primary contaminants. Your people can begin returning to the southern continent by the 2nd growing season. The Drakari governor, Tarek, who had once dismissed human environmental science as primitive, now watched with undisguised awe as Mitchell's team released the first batch of microorganisms into a devastated lake. Within hours, sensors showed toxicity levels dropping measurably. "We tried everything," Tarek admitted, his blue scales dull with exhaustion and shame. "Our best minds could not replicate what Professor Lee had created." Different evolutionary paths lead to different forms of insight, Mitchell said diplomatically. This time, we'll ensure knowledge transfer is part of the process. No world should be dependent on a single species' expertise for survival. Similar scenes played out across former council space. Captain Aisha Carter, who had once served as a junior officer under Sofia Ramos, now found herself brokering peace between the Crystalline Republic and the Hive Collective. The two species had been on the brink of war over resource allocation when humanity withdrew. "The proposed joint harvesting operation benefits both parties," Carter explained, displaying holographic projections of a shared mining complex. Crystalline precision extraction combined with hive processing efficiency yields a 30% increase in output with 40% less waste. The crystalline representative's facets gleamed with skepticism. "The hive has never honored boundary agreements. And the crystalline have never shared extraction technology," countered the hive ambassador, antennae quivering. Carter smiled patiently. "Which is why humans will oversee the transition. With transparency protocols and independent verification," she let the silence stretch meaningfully. "Unless, of course, you prefer to continue your resource war while the Void Hunters rebuild their forces." Agreement came swiftly after that. Perhaps most impressive was Admiral Moreno's rapid distribution of human medical supplies, agricultural modules, and infrastructure templates to desperate worlds. Drakari starports that had fallen silent hummed back to life. Zephyrian military bases received new modular supply units designed by Lieutenant Hale's team. Dying ecosystems stabilized under the care of human ecological specialists. But these humanitarian efforts, while substantial, were merely the prelude to the real negotiations. On Horizon's edge, the new human capital constructed in the darkness between spiral arms, Commander Vexar found himself in the uncomfortable position of supplicant. The Safarian's private audience with Admiral Moreno took place in a chamber whose design subtly emphasized human accomplishment. The walls adorned with displays showing real-time data from 100 worlds being restored by human intervention. The Council acknowledges its misjudgment regarding humanity's role in galactic affairs, Vexar said carefully, his translator struggling to convey the proper tone of humility. "We propose renegotiation of humanity's status. Your people would be welcomed back, with appropriate consideration for your contributions." "Appropriate consideration," Moreno repeated, studying the alien's face. "And what might that entail exactly?" "A probationary period of council membership, representation on select committees, gradual integration into—" "No," Moreno said simply. Vexar's scales rippled in confusion. "I don't understand." "Humanity will not accept probationary status. Commander, we will not gradually integrate. We will not be granted select representation." Moreno leaned forward. "If the Council wishes alliance with humanity, these are our terms. Full equality from day one. No probationary periods. Comprehensive Council voting rights. Unrestricted exploration rights. And most importantly, unassailable respect for human contributions to galactic welfare." Vexar's throat worked, his natural pride battling against the desperate reality facing the Council. The traditions of the Council stretch back 3 millennia. Admiral, what you ask overturns. Traditions that failed, Moreno interrupted. Traditions that left you helpless against the Void Hunters. Traditions that collapsed entire ecosystems when a single species withdrew its support. She gestured toward the displays. Look at what humanity has accomplished in 2 years of independence. Commander, now imagine what we could achieve together, as equals. The silence stretched between them, weighted with 3,000 years of history and the uncertain future that lay ahead. Finally, Vexar dipped his head in the Cypherian gesture of acquiescence. I will convey your terms to the Council. Admiral, I believe they will find them acceptable, given the circumstances. As Vexar departed, Admiral Moreno allowed herself a small smile. The hard part was over. Now came the complex work of building a truly cooperative galactic community, one where humanity's chaos would be recognized as the vital innovative force it had always been. 6 months after the signing of the new treaties, the galactic landscape had transformed. Human-led ecological, economic, and diplomatic initiatives had stabilized dozens of formerly collapsing systems. The Council itself had been restructured. Humans now occupied 5 permanent seats, co-chairing key committees on defense, trade, and environmental stewardship. The Council Hall itself had been partially rebuilt. The glowing blue crystal walls remained, but human alloy inlays and adaptive holographic panels now lined the upper rings, blending tradition with innovation. The tiered seating had been redesigned to form a true circle, with no species elevated above others. Ambassador Elena Vargas stood at the center of this transformed chamber, addressing the first full session of the new Galactic Council. 2.5 years ago, I walked out of these chambers because humanity was denied the respect and recognition we deserved, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Today, I stand before you not as a petitioner, but as an equal partner in our shared future. Around her, representatives of 48 species, the original council members and several newly admitted races from regions humans had explored, listened with varying degrees of enthusiasm and resignation. The crisis we have weathered together has taught us all valuable lessons, Vargas continued. The ethereals have learned that predictability without chaos leads to stagnation. The Cypherians have discovered that tradition without innovation becomes brittle. And humanity has learned that independence without cooperation limits our potential. She gestured to the newly installed council charter, prominently displayed where all could see it. This new covenant between our peoples is not based on age or power or tradition. It is founded on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and the understanding that diversity of biology, of thought, of approach is our greatest strength against the darkness that lies beyond our borders. Commander Vexar, now serving as the Cypherian Council representative rather than military delegate, rose to speak. The Council acknowledges the wisdom in Ambassador Vargas's words, he said, his scales showing the deep blue of formal ceremony. For too long, we measured worth by longevity rather than contribution. We called humans children with fire and feared the flames of change they brought. We failed to see that such fire, properly channeled, illuminates the path forward for us all. From his position among the human delegation, Vice Admiral Marcus Liu watched the proceedings with a mixture of pride and caution. The journey from military observer to architect of integrated defense protocols had been unexpected. Now he oversaw the implementation of joint human council defense systems, combining alien technological precision with human improvisational tactics. "Do you think it will last?" asked Captain Sofia Ramos, seated beside him. Her work in rebuilding trade networks had earned her elevation to the Commerce Committee. "Nothing lasts forever," Liu replied quietly. "But this has a better chance than most arrangements. They need our chaos as much as we need their order. It just took a crisis for everyone to realize it. As the formal session concluded, delegates moved to the observation decks where a historic sight awaited them. A new fleet of exploration vessels, designed with joint Human Council technology, prepared to depart for regions of the void no one had yet surveyed. The sleek ships represented the best of both worlds. Alien precision engineering enhanced by human adaptive systems. Their mission was not conquest or resource extraction, but discovery and diplomacy, extending the hand of a unified galactic community to whatever new civilizations might await them in the vast unknown. Ambassador Vargas stood at the viewport, watching as the ships engaged their drives and vanished into the darkness. Beside her, Resonance 7 hovered, its crystalline structure now pulsing with harmonious colors. Our predictive models show 17 possible first contact scenarios, the ethereal communicated. All but 3 result in peaceful exchange. And the remaining 3? Vargas asked. Uncertain, Resonance 7 admitted. Human variables introduce possibilities our models cannot fully anticipate. But that uncertainty, we have come to value it. Vargas smiled. That's the first step toward true wisdom. I think, embracing the unknown rather than fearing it. As the last exploration vessel disappeared from view, Commander Vexar joined them at the viewport. Your people have a saying, do they not? The children have grown. And now, Vargas finished, we help chart the stars together. The 3 representatives, human, ethereal, and Cepharian, stood in companionable silence, watching the void where the ships had vanished. Behind them, the bustle of the renewed council continued, a symphony of diverse species working together in an alliance forged through crisis and reborn in mutual respect. Beyond the council station, the galaxy continued its eternal spiral, stars burning in patterns unchanged for billions of years. But among those ancient lights, something new had emerged, a partnership that might, with care and wisdom, illuminate the darkness for millennia to come.